The biggest issue in the industry, they obsess over the wrong things that aren't going to move the needle, and that's why they get stuck. You either want people to tell you to buy or tell you to fuck off, basically. Unpopular opinion, monthly recurring is for pussies, so people want monthly recurring because they don't want to fucking sell and they don't want to do their job.
Joining this podcast episode with the one and only Charlie Johnson. Charlie, just a quick one just to start off with. I thought a good place to start, maybe it's an elevator pitch style like introduction, potentially. And then
who I am and what I do. Okay,
yeah.
So very short synopsis. 6 years ago, as an estate agent, I did the Gary Vee side hustle, built up an online fitness business, one of the biggest businesses in Europe. I subsequently moved to Dubai 2 years ago. We set up 7-figure scaling systems, which is the number one mastermind to help coaches grow their business about 14 months ago. And the way I'd explain it to people is I'm the person who does the thing at the highest level and teaches other people at the highest level. And with 1,000% certainty, and you can hear it in my voice right now, I get shivers saying it, there is no one in the world who can help you build your fitness business better than I can and the team we have. Hence why we're on the podcast right now. And we actually have a huge event in Dubai in a couple of days' time, which will obviously be after this is aired. But my passion is really helping people maximize their potential we do in our fitness business. That's over 1,300 clients, and as we do in our mastermind as well.
Amazing. And I think one thing on that, like I think we spoke a little bit beforehand, but one thing I see and I find is like you're exceptional. Like I've never seen someone better in terms of like building teams and like having it all run as it should. Do you have any, like, have you always been quite good, like even with your real estate stuff in terms of team building and like finding the right people for stuff?
100%. And that's I'd say it's a huge compliment, because that is the most challenging thing in business, is finding the right people, building a team. And for anyone, a really important thing to understand is any company you own a recruitment company, because the most important thing you can do if you actually want to have a successful business is hire and train world-class staff. Because if you can't do that, your business is going to be shit. So where I would say I was very fortunate at the time, I didn't realise, is my previous career of managing estate agents. I was used to managing people, knew how to run teams, knew how management structures look like. And then I have been fortunate, you could say, or created your own luck in terms of the team I created have come together and been great, and it's worked. It's interesting you say that the team works really well and everything's very good, because I still think there's a lot of room to improvement, but that's probably my perfectionist nature with certain things. And one of the most important things as well for anyone to understand a business is, like, you will never be finished. The task list will never be zero. You'll never be you never complete business. And the moment you think you complete business is the moment everything tanks. But I'd say the most important thing for people to think about when you're building a team is 3 things. One is sourcing the right person. Now, what I mean by that is not just hiring the first person who comes to you. I've done that in the past. That generally doesn't end well. B would be, if you're interviewing them, remember that they are selling themselves on you. There is a sale in that. I've made a lot of mistakes with that. I made a $70,000 mistake, which we can go into, which is another hiring process I fucked up. And then thirdly, having clear expectations, which we actually spoke about a bit before this, in terms of like what you expect from them, what they should expect from you, and like what does good look like. And your job as a CEO, owner of a business, is to basically give them the playbook. So like, imagine you've got Lionel Messi in a football team, you give him the ball. Like if he hasn't got the ball, he can't score the goal. So you have to think about your team members in that fashion. Is like, how can we set them up to win? And often the biggest mistake I see is that a lot of people who hire people will be like, I hired this team member and he's shit. It's like, you hired him and you trained him and he's bad. So whose fault is it? And that's where, like, realities in business, the most important thing is taking extreme ownership, because like in all my business, everything is my fault if it goes wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Segueing a little bit from that, potentially we'll come back to it, but like with that, how do you manage the pressure that comes from everything is your fault?
It's a corny saying, but pressure is a privilege, from Chris Bumstead. But an important thing to understand is that your business will only grow to your ability to handle stress. The higher your ability to handle more stress, the more you can do, the more you can take on, the more money you can make. And that's a process that comes with time. And I think a lot of people really underestimate how much they can handle. But I'm a big numbers guy, right? So I'd say one of the most daunting things sometimes when you have a bigger business is our expenses are $100K a month. like flat out. So you see your face at that. It's like, that's a lot of money. So I'm whenever I have moments of self-doubt, I go through all my bank accounts, I look at my net worth, I'm like, you're fine, you're not broke. I was like, you're fine. Like if I have like a few slow days where I start to shit the bed, I look at what we have. The second thing I think is a really important thing is I do a financial projection in terms of, okay, this is our average run rate of how much money we're going to make every day. This is when we next have to pay all our staff, all the big expenses. That's how much income should come in. And the numbers will give you a lot more security to know where you're at. And I think a lot of the time people don't look at the data or the numbers accurately enough, because the biggest stress most people have is finances. And if you really check your accounts and really know what's going on, like you actually doing it, not like a fucking accountant. I don't have an accountant. Like I do it myself to like literally know, okay, this is how much we're making, this is how much we're spending here. Like you have to know the numbers in the business. I think that's the number one cause of stress. The second cause of stress is going to be uncertainty in terms of knowing exactly what to do to scale the business, which is where if you don't know like what to do next or what to do every day, you need a mentor to help you. Like I've always had, I probably worked with 8 to 10 different mentors over the last 6-7 years. I paid one £50,000 in April, May, and doubled my business next month. That's money well spent. And then thirdly, I would say is having organisation around your own like personal structure and calendar. So like knowing what you're doing at what time do you have meetings laid out, all that type of stuff. Because the reason people get overwhelmed and stressed is they can't effectively manage themselves. And if you can't manage yourself, then you can't manage other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So a big three would be the numbers, not knowing them. And I think that's it's huge, just having like a spreadsheet and reviewing it all. And then, so what would your kind of personal boundaries then on point 3 look like? How do you lay out things now, and how does it
I'm in a different phase now. I'm pushing it quite heavily in terms of my demands, what we're doing. So if I take it back to maybe what's more relevant to other people than now, because I'll talk about 3 different stages here. So phase 1 is like the foundational phase when starting. And this is the phase most people don't like and most people can't get through, is you have to work really fucking hard. You have to work an awful lot at the beginning. Like I did everything. I messaged people. I coached people. I coached like 200 clients. I had all the sales. I made all the content. I did everything. And I was making like 15 grand a month whilst working full time, competing and coaching all these people and doing all the other shit myself. And that's why people say that, I can't do it, I don't have time, is that you can. You're just not making it big enough a priority, or it's not important enough to you. So I'd say at the beginning, you have to fuck off balance, because if you want balance, if you want to chill, then other people who are not balanced, particularly at the beginning, are going to fuck you over and push you down the pipeline, and you're not going to succeed. So at the beginning, the unpopular thing is you're going to have to work hard. I think when you get out the point where you have got some traction, say you're making 10 to 20k a month more, that's a different game of then starting to build your team. And probably the best stage I got to in terms of balance was before I moved to Dubai. And even the first stage when I was in Dubai, before I set up the mastermind, one of the reasons I set up the mastermind is I got bored and had too much time. I was probably only working like 3 days a week. I took off like, I think Tuesday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and the weekends. And I can see you laughing. And I was making 6 figures a month. I was like, it was almost too easy at that point. But 2021 was a different time in history. It was like the easiest time to make money online, just with the way economies were. So I think it's important to understand like balance comes as the business grows. Initially at the beginning, you have to work a lot more. And then the goal I have for everyone is to like remove the golden handcuffs, I like to say, because the goal is you have a business that serves you and then actually helps you in terms of like it works for you, not the other way around. So you're not the one pressing the buttons. You can step away for a week. The business continues. I'll give a really good example. Would be Adam Lowe and Alia, who used to run the mastermind, right? They a couple who were together, killing the mastermind. She did $90,000 last month. I think he did 60, which I know is a bit sore point for Adam if you watch this. And they went away for a week to the Maldives. Didn't really work. Had a record month. That's when the business works for you and you don't work for it. And for me, that's like what success looks like and what good looks like, because you actually have a business, not a well-paid job. And most people are just creating a well-paid job. So that's what I'd call like phase 2 of like when you've got a successful business. I'm more in phase 3, which is like hyper growth phase of trying to like conquer the world and do everything, which is, if you've heard of like mythology of like Icarus who flies too close to the sun and gets a bit burnt, I'm sit about 95% burnt out most of the time, and go through phases of that. And when I feel that I really need to like take some time out and chill, I'll take like a weekend off and I'll maybe only work for like 2 hours and go and do some other stuff. But I think it's important to try and push yourself as much as you can. And if you feel burnt out and you need to rest, go to, like, you live in Dubai, go to the beach in the afternoon. If you live in the UK, you want to go for a walk with your dogs in the afternoon, take time out. Like, go with how you intuitively feel. And I think sometimes 90% of people won't push themselves hard enough. And I think the other 10% of people, when they do take time off, they feel guilty for that, which I do as well sometimes. But it's like withdrawal symptoms, right? Like a drug addict. Like, my business is like a big red shiny toy. If I am taken away from that, you're not allowed to use that for the next day or two. When I come back, I'm excited to do it again. So that would be my definition of balance, is actually like, what do you want? Like, if there's something you really want to go and do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's the emotive side of things comes across a lot as well. It's like, why do something you don't? Why kind of take way too much time off just because you don't enjoy taking that much time? And then, what's the point that you go from phase 1, where you're doing all the things, placing all the buttons, to going into phase 2, where you're starting to look at taking the handcuffs away?
The most important thing in that process is, here's a really good thing to think about. So work out what your time is worth per hour. So if you work out, okay, I make X amount of profit per month, I work this many hours per month, divide them together, you work out how much you make per hour. What you then want to do is basically delegate and eliminate anything that's under that hourly rate. So first things I would delegate for anyone who's listening to this runs a coaching business. One would be fulfillment. So you shouldn't be doing coaching check-ins. You should hire coaches to work under you. B would be like messaging, call setting. C would be content editing. Like, these are the monotonous, time laborious things that really get you sucked into the business. And you're working in the business, not working on the business. And for you to go from phase 1 to phase 2, you need to be working on the business, which is building systems, building teams, all that stuff, so you can start to come back. The only thing I would say is important at that stage, though, is for a lot of people, is what are you replacing? Like, if I step out of 20 hours of work a week, what am I replacing those 20 hours with? Like, sitting on the beach drinking cocktails, or am I actually going to do something else that's productive? So I think that's the only other thing I think some people make the mistake of, is they take their time out and step back, but they don't redeploy that time effectively, if that makes sense. So if I look at what I'm doing now, and I know it's going to come up later on, but one of my plans for next year is focus on personal brand, growth, content, audience, everything as much as possible. So I'm trying to get as much of my time back so I can spend time on podcasts and share knowledge, experience, and help inspire people, rather than being like building ClickFunnels pages and running all the ads. Like, I can do that. I've learned all those skills, but no one else can do this right now, like right here, other than me.
Yeah, I see. And then it becomes much easier. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, with the taking time away and getting people to redeploy that time, one big thing I've kind of picked up of being around you is, like, the biggest thing is always money coming in. Like, nothing, like, that's by far the biggest importance. Is there anything else you would like look at, or is it always going to be like money coming in has to be like?
Two things. So I'm glad you said that. I don't know how that came across, but like, if we look at, money isn't everything in the world, but money is everything until you don't have it. So for example, people say, oh, you shouldn't want to make loads of money on for whatever reason. Well, when your mum or your dad or your son, your wife is really fucking sick and you can't pay the medical bills, you're going to fucking take a hard look in the mirror and be like, I should have worked harder and had the ability to take care of everyone. And I think the next thing you've got to look at is in terms of like the things that actually show success in the business is money. Like, that's the driving factor of why we do this. Yes, we want to help people, but that's the thing that shows how good you are at your skill, because the amount of money you make is a direct reflection of the amount of people you manage to help, and the value, the size of the problem you solve. So the other thing I would look at as like what I obsess over is booking calls and leads, and I was always obsessed with that because that's the leading indicator of your business. So like, even if I had, okay, so if I mentioned about bank accounts earlier, right? If I emptied all my bank accounts, got rid of everything, but I knew I had, I don't know, I think we got like 25, 30 fitness sales calls today. I know I've got money coming in. And if I know that I've got that for the next week, I know there's money coming. That's the leading indicator of your business, is the leads coming in and calls booked. When that stops, that's when you've got a fucking problem. So that's the most important thing to understand, is like, what's the leading indicator of your business? For online fitness coaches and anyone with online businesses, it's going to be leads coming in, so it's going to be calls booked. And that's why I always say to people, is like, the only things you need to think about is booking calls and closing calls. And one of the most stupid things I've seen other mentors talk about is building fucking systems. Systems for fucking what? Yeah. Like, I've spoken to people who are building systems for 7 months and still making the same amount of money they were 7 months ago. Like, the reality is, like, the goal is to make more money and grow the business. You can make really complicated email automations for the sake of looking fucking clever, or we can just do the basics and execute them superbly well, make loads more money and scale the business. And if you look at, from a sporting perspective, if you look at like the greatest basketball players and athletes in history, they'll just practice the basics over and over and over again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you don't go to the next thing until you've actually got...
Yeah, until you've got that skill set to a high level, right? Because the biggest thing I see is most people lack the ability to distinctly focus and see through a task. They start something, it's maybe harder than they thought, and then, I'll go and do the next thing. And they dance around, like dipping their toe in each pond before like really fully jumping in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that came to mind to me was when I was personal training. I spent like 6 months doing a Wix website, which got like 1 call booked in that time frame. So I guess my question is with regards to like getting calls booked and like getting leads coming through. What's the like? How do you? I'm guessing that's something you wouldn't delegate. Like, that's something you wouldn't delegate until you.
So the last 2 things you want to delegate the last thing you want to delegate in a business is sales. So actually taking sales calls, because that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's what really brings income into business. I would initially say that up to a certain point, if you have the capacity, you should handle, like, I still do some outbound messaging in my account now, like maybe like 15, 20 messages a day just to prove a point, and to keep the other guys doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think leading from the front in every business is important. But I would say at some point you need to start to let the reins off, and saying a like is you can have control or you can have growth. And I have to accept a lot of the time that things aren't maybe 100% done how I want, but that's allowed me to go and do all this other stuff over here that's allowed us to skyrocket off, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess doing it at 70%, but doing much higher volume of it is way better than doing maybe 100%.
Well, it's leverage, right? If I've got 10 people doing something at 90% of the capacity that I could do it, then that's more than I could do anyway. Like, I can't do it all. I joked on a podcast that I reckon I could get 7 figures a year on my own, like with no one. I wouldn't enjoy it and it wouldn't be fun, and I'd probably hate it after about a year. I wouldn't do it again. But it would be possible to do. But then when you actually bring other people in, you've got so much manpower leverage at that point that the output of what you do is huge. And one of the most important things I think people to understand is that getting everyone to row, like imagine a rowboat row in the same direction, makes a huge difference. So, like, for example, today I have a call with like 40 people on Zoom who work for us from every business I have, to be like, now's the 2 fucking months, you have to put your fucking head down and go for it. Because now is like money making season, so we all need to be fucking super switched on and make it happen. And when you have people working for you, if you get an extra 5% out of every person, imagine I've got 40 people working for me, you get 5% more out of all of them, that makes a big difference in terms of performance. So I'd say another important thing to do is incentivize people for performance and make sure they know what good performance looks like.
Would incentivizing performance, would that just be pen and paper, what does good results look like in the middle, and then breaking down what it takes, and then
so it almost to the point of like, this is what we expect, this is what good is, and here's some bonuses if you can exceed it. So what you want to do is people to overperform. So I'll give an example. We had if you watched this, Gareth, one of our phone dialers, we were doing about 300 phone calls outbound a day. We brought this guy in from South Africa, and first day did 630 calls, twice as many as anyone else. Everyone else is like, what the fuck? So instantly, like, the standard for everyone else is going up. And that's what you need as people to hold people to a higher standard within the business. Because I said to you before, we've got rid of a few people recently, because if you have someone who's not performing, it pulls the average down. If you get rid of them and you bring someone else in who's even fucking better than everyone you have right now, it's putting you way up. So that's the goal, is to actually like build a business and improve the team and structure you have. And that's how you go far quickly, is together with a group of people. You don't go alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah. In terms of letting go of people, you mentioned, what's the step process you use for that? Like, when do you decide someone's...
Okay, this is a good conversation. So firstly, if anyone makes a mistake or is really bad at the beginning, I get rid of them, like straight away. If like, given it, like a lot of people fail even to get an interview. So like, people will, like, I don't know, message me on Instagram about a job role. I'll be like, send me a Loom video. They're like, what's a Loom? I was like, you failed. Like not good enough. If you don't know what Loom video is, you're not going to be a fit. So the way I look at it is, I allow people like slack in terms of like, you make a mistake. Okay, you need to do it like this. Here's a video recording. I'll show you as well. Do you understand this? Yes. If they do the same thing again, then I get rid of them, because then at that point they're not coachable, because you've reconfirmed to them what they have to do. They've got a video recording of how to do it, and now they're not doing it. And at that point I'd ask them, is like, do you not understand, or do you just not want to do this? Because if you don't understand, there's a video showing exactly how to do it, and I've already shown you. So therefore it clearly looks like you just don't want to do this.
Yeah. But that's like you making sure you've got the steps process to be on top of it at the beginning, and then it's...
And that's why I think the most important thing for everyone to have is daily meetings with a team every single day, call setters, closers, whoever is in your organisation, to make sure you're all beating to the same drum, because the biggest issue when you have more people is a lack of communication and clarity, and who's doing what. And people have to take ownership of specific tasks. And as I've scaled, one of the problems I found out initially was, at one point I had like 16 people directly reporting to me, and I was losing my mind. Now, what's important is that I look at almost like Navy SEALs teams. You don't want more than 6 people coming to you directly, because otherwise it's too much. You can't manage more than 6. So I always try and filter it out to have no more than that coming direct. So like one of the things I'm going to teach you the mastermind is actually how to build teams, and then how to build call setting teams, and how to pull people up to be managing that team, if that makes sense. Because ideally what you want is like a supervisor for every team, and then you just oversee them, if that makes sense, and jump in when there's problems. Yeah,
so the communication is still happening for the 16 people, but it's like there's someone before they get to you. And then what does the like daily calls look like? What do you go over on those? Like how?
Good question. So the calls I manage are the sales and call setting calls for the mastermind. So we go through, it's ironic actually, I only thought I said it before, but this is basically what we used to do when I was an estate agent. We go through the diary of like viewings, and now I basically do the same thing but with like phone sales calls. So we'll go through all the prospects who are booked in, look at all their social media profiles, review what we're going to pitch them, what's the angle to use on each person. So like we have a game plan for everything that day. We then look at same for the previous day, like how do those sales calls go? What's the feedback? We look at what calls been booked, who's booking what, who's struggling, because it's all about having a quick feedback loop so we can fix problems. And the quicker you have a feedback loop with problems, the quicker you can scale your business. Because if you solve problems today that you didn't know about until next week because you haven't spoken to the person, the business moves forward much quicker.
Yeah, it's like 7 times quicker if you do it daily then. Cool, amazing. And one thing, I'm potentially going to spiral it here again, but one thing for some reason came to mind, very first thing when I was thinking of the podcast, was more towards like the numbers and the business growth. Like one thing for me that I find challenging is like the switching off side of things, but also taking money away from it for like personal stuff. How do you balance the two, like spending on yourself versus like the business, and when do you know?
That's a very good question. So I'm a big believer in positive feedback loops. So your brain will instinctively remember positive feedback. So I had a weird phase last year where every time someone signed up for Mastermind, I'd buy a pair of trainers to give me a positive feedback. I got like way too many trainers, so I had to stop. Like it'd be retarded. So I had to stop that quite quickly. But that was what I was doing to like give me license to be like, you did a good job. You did a good job. So I think having something you do like that is important. So treating yourself is important. Like I bought this because we hit a milestone business wise, and I'm gonna buy a new car when we hit next business milestone that I have set in my mind, because I think it's important to reward yourself at those points, because it keeps pushing you more to realize like, this thing I'm building is working for me. I'm not a slave to it. And I would say there's a fine balance between, and you're not this way inclined, I see some people who are reckless and spend all their money on stupid shit. I've never been like that. I invest like 95% of my money in properties. But you actually spending some on yourself will motivate you more to work harder. And that's very much what's happened to me. And I'd say for you that how much you put into your business is as much as possible when there's something that's got a really good ROI on it. So the biggest thing that's made most money for me and always will do is mentorship and guidance and like people to learn from, because the more you learn, the more you earn, and you learn faster if you just go to someone who knows exactly what to do, who's done what you want to do, or like knows that industry inside out, because what you're getting from that person is experience of how not to make stupid mistakes. Like I made a lot of mistakes in growing my fitness business and other businesses I have. And that's where like I've taken a lot of scars and had a lot of big problems. And that's where I can save people a lot of issues and heartache and problems that they don't even know are on the horizon yet. And that's where I say to people is like, I can see what you can't see, because I've climb the mountains you want to climb, and I know what it looks like when you get to the peak, and then like how do you get down from the top, or what do you do when you want to go climb the next mountain, because I've been there and I've crossed that hurdle. And I think a lot of that then comes down to mentality and mindset. And I actually would say the biggest thing I find now more is the bigger my businesses get, the more I'm realizing it's a personal development and a mindset game at that point more than anything, because I know all the strategies, I know all the tactics. It's just then about how do you maximize who you are, and think about who you are rather than how do I do it. So like becoming the person who can have an 8-figure business, 7-figure business, whatever it might be, rather than how do I do it. The second thing I would say, contrary to that though, is that when it comes to how do I do it, that's where most people get stuck, because they think, oh, I'm going to buy all the ClickFunnels books and learn how to sell stuff on the internet. It's like, that's the how. If you think the who, like who's the person who can just be like, yeah, do these 2-3 things, you're off to the races. And that's literally how I doubled one of our businesses in May by just changing an offer in terms of what a mentor said to us, and literally doubled the business like that in 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's the more like, I think one thing I was thinking about recently is like every mentorship investment I've always made my money back, and it's because I think it's more backing myself more than anything. So one thing you kind of touched on was like skill development and like personal development stuff. Is there any kind of like top 2 or 3 things you think like you need to have somewhere in your notes or on a whiteboard, like to prioritize and look at to keep improving in?
This isn't a personal, this is probably a personal development, and this is something I've mentioned before on the mastermind that everyone should do. I have on a whiteboard next to me monthly projection. I have the income, like month to date, how much money we've made so far. I then have the daily average, how much money we're averaging on per day. You then times the daily average by how many days are on a month. We give you the month projection, and then I'll have an estimated profit, which is minus roughly what our costs will be. Knowing your numbers and that, seeing the fluctuations is really important. And I think physically, like writing something, really engraves it in your brain to focus on the most important thing, which is making money in the business and driving income. Because likes and followers and shit like that doesn't feed your kids. Like you actually making money and having a profitable business does. Now, when it comes to personal development, I'd say it comes down to a couple of things. One, the spouse or partner you decide to be with will have the biggest impact on your life. Alongside number 2 is the environment. So the environment of who you associate with, the environment of who your friends are, the environment of where you live. I've changed both of those things in the last 3 years, and it's made me very uncomfortable. It's pushed me very hard. It's been very difficult, but it's now put put me in a position to then start to go to the next level of where I want to be, which I knew couldn't be done where I was previously. And I think that's what people need to look at, is like, what's potentially a weak point for me right now? How can I improve that, fix that? Or who doesn't maybe add value to my life I maybe shouldn't see so much? And a lot of the time that can sometimes be your parents and your family. Like, I've probably distanced myself from my family a bit to then go and push off and do these other things, because they would say to me, you work too much. Like, why are you working so much? You're obsessed. Like, and like my answer to that would be like, you have to be if you want to go really, really far with something. And the reality is you can go through times of being obsessed and super driven, and you do that for 2-3 years, you then get to a certain level, then you can do whatever you want. And most people aren't willing to like do the fucking grind for 2 to 3 years to get to that point, which is the big problem, that most people aren't willing to like cross that hurdle.
Yeah. And with getting yourself, it's probably going to be very hard for people to relate it to everyone, I guess, but with getting yourself out your comfort zone, one thing I'm kind of thinking out loud is I've never seen anyone take such big action that they just failed tremendously. So
100%. So like my greatest gift and biggest weakness in business is like, one, I implement like insanely fast, better than anyone else, and two is like volume. Like, I try to hit everything with like a volume hammer. Like, if you look on Instagram, I have 6,700 posts. Like, I've got, we asked the podcast dude, we do a lot of podcasts. Like, I do a lot, and action creates reaction, right? I think a lot of people don't understand that. And I'd say in particular at the beginning, you have to play a volume game to see what works. And a lot of people, I'll say to him, like, obviously you run a call center business. So I say to him like, okay, how many outbound messages are you doing? Like 30. I was like, that's fucking rookie numbers. I was like, this is, okay, if you go from 30 to 90, you book 3 times as many calls. So why don't you just do that? And the reality is most people don't, although it's very obvious, don't sometimes connect the dots that, okay, if the main drive of the business is booking calls, what's the main thing that again helps you get calls booked? More views, more better content, messaging more people. So then it probably makes sense to then spend more time at those things, and obviously becoming better in who you are. So like better mindset, better at talking, better physique, whatever it might be.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Like in the last few months, I'd see stuff come up. Like I saw WhatsApp ads and stuff, like weird stuff. Like that's not gonna be beneficial. I'm like, what would Charlie do? Like that's a shiny object. Yeah. Ignore it. So the biggest stuff is literally always the same. It's content. It's conversations, getting that working well rather than...
Well, yeah, it's brand and reputation, right? Because your reputation and who you are will compound for you indefinitely. And I think the problem is, and I've been lured into that trap a lot of times, is it's very easy to get pulled off course from the monotonous shit that needs to be done every day. I put post in the group the other day, it's like, you just need to do the monotonous stuff. Like I do the same thing pretty much every day. And I actually thought about it earlier. This is a really good idea for a course. I thought it was 3C course, and it's content, calendar, and cash. So it's like content in terms of like who you are, branding, like getting views and traffic, so people know who you are. Next is cash in terms of like sales, obviously making money and how that process looks like. And calendar is like, how do you max out your calendar and actually organize yourself to be successful? If you do those 3 things together, you have a pretty successful business. And that's obviously a very loose term, but I was thinking about that in the car on the way here, and I think that then could, like, those 3 things really apply to any business model. When I actually look at what I do, that's basically the crux of what I do. It's like content, traffic, calendar of maybe meetings and running people, and then helping us sell stuff.
Yeah, I see. And then one thing I had, I think you've seen on my notes, but one thing I had in mind, I wonder a lot on, is like, what do you see for me in terms of my personal blind spots in terms of everything? Like, where am I slacking, or where it's probably not good to put out in the public, but
I would say for you, the number one reason most people struggle is lack of confidence. You need to believe in yourself more. And everyone, like, I have a lot of lack of self-belief sometimes, but I am very driven and disciplined and just like keep going. So I think the most important thing is you really believing in yourself and having certainty. So like looking at like the people you've helped, look at the great feedback you get from people. And I say from anyone else who's in that position where you lack confidence, you sometimes lack confidence in your business because you don't commit and see things through, like the promises you make to yourself. Like, you become confident when you say, I'm going to get up every day at 6 a.m. and you fucking do it. You become confident when you say, I'm going to go to the gym every day and I do it. You become confident when you're like, I'm going to message 50 clients a day and you actually do it. And the big thing is most people don't do that. So I think for you, it's more confidence in terms of pushing like how good you are at what you do, because you are really good. And then also in terms of you just 10xing what you do in terms of like volume of stuff, but in an organized fashion. So like I said earlier about the calendar, is like being really structured in terms of the way you work, because now we live in a world where it's really difficult to focus because there's so many things spinning in your head all the time. And business is a game of simplification, not multiplication. And I'm actually trying to think more now about how to simplify my life. I'm reading a book at the moment. It's called 2X is Better Than 10X. I shared on the Facebook group yesterday. Really fucking good. And it talks about, Michelangelo talks about building the statue of David. And he said, someone asked him, like, how do you make the statue of David so good? He's like, all I focused on was David. I was like nothing else in my life other than this fucking statue. And if you think about it like that, you're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because it reminds me of the saying that a genius, if he's focusing on 5 things and an idiot's focusing on 1, the genius will lose to the idiot. And too often I've become, not that I'm a genius, but I've become the genius trying to do too many things rather than just the one thing really well. And that's why I actually have on my computer screen or sticky note, like, get aggressive with the detail, because I want to go off and do everything. Whereas I often need to just like rein myself back in to be like, you're not allowed to do anything other than these 2 things.
Yeah, I see. Amazing. And then one thing inspired as well to just, I guess, touch on was your recent post was niching down.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't people do it, and what's the balance with it? Because I think in my personal training time, I definitely was told a lot more of the opposite, and it didn't give me as many results.
Okay, so here's a good thing for anyone to think about, I think, who's watching, listening to this. The person who's telling you to niche down, have they ever run a really successful fitness business on the internet? Have they ever sold something really successfully on the internet? Probably not. Because the reason niching doesn't work down, in particular with organic traffic, say I'm a fitness trainer and I'm niched down. I work with vegan mums who are over 35 and they only live in Toronto. The reality is the amount of vegan mums who live in Toronto, might be a few who follow me, is probably not that many. Also, the reality is the way social media works, that not all of those vegan mums who were in Toronto were actually going to see my content anyway. So probably 99% of the audience I have are going to be like, well, he's not for me, he only works with vegan mums. So you're actually pushing money away. And the reality is, if you're a good coach, you can help 99% of people. Like, yes, you probably shouldn't be training Olympic athletes and things like that. The reality is they're not going to come to you. So if you work in Gen Pop weight loss, you can help men, you can help women, because the biggest issue people have is accountability and mindsets are the primary issues. Like, we're not going to like molecular biology in terms of like gut microbiome issues with a lot of these people. Yes, those people probably need to go to a niche specialist. And if you have that skill set, then yes, you should niche. But 99% of clients, fitness trainers, shouldn't be going down specific niches. What you find, particularly at the beginning, is you will start to niche actually as you scale, because you'll notice a certain type of client starts coming to you. And then your business starts to niche more towards that. So at the beginning, you want to start broad, because you basically just want to take who you can get, and you need to make money as a business to get going. Like 99% of businesses fail in 2 years. So like, if you want to be the 1% that succeed, I would go broad targeting. And then you'll find that a certain amount of people start to come to you. So you might end up like, okay, I keep getting dads who are over 35. Maybe that's the niche to start to like, not specifically label myself on my Instagram bio as, because you're just going to push people away, but you make content talking to that type of person. You relate to that type of person. And generally, what you want to think about is that you're the attractive character at the front of the story, who teaches, inspires every day and gives value and education, and also helps people with their problems, rather than being like a performing monkey into like a specific niche of vegan mums who only want to eat tofu. Like, that's really going to limit your constraints. And the big thing this comes to is traffic, because you just don't have enough eyeballs in that niche to make it successful.
Yeah, so is that down to like So I'm guessing it's just more the content, the copywriting. Is it down to the feel of like people not relating to the copywriting of posts, or like
why people think you should niche? If it's good copy, it's broad enough, it'll fit to most people, right? Like come January 1st, what does everyone want? So it's like you don't need to be that specific. Come, I don't know, come springtime, what does everyone want? Get in shape for summer, right? So it's like, okay, so let's just talk about these things, and then put your own nuances about who you are and like use client examples. I think that's where we don't need to go too granular with it. I think that's where too many people go overkill, going too specific, whereas you need to be broader. And I think the biggest thing people need to understand is it's a traffic and attention game, and it's the coach who's the most well known, he gets the most traffic, who makes the most money. It's not necessarily the person who's the best coach. And I'd actually say, if anyone listening, this is an important thing, and I've actually said this to some of our clients recently, is like they've done some training, seminars and stuff to be better coaches, which is awesome. Like I fucking love that. But they're already amazing coaches. So like you can get 1% better at this thing over here, or this like sales and marketing, or 10, 20% at that. Like you need to put more time here to grow this, to then really maximize the skill set you have over here, because the skills stack and compound off each other, and they multiply off each other, which is what most people don't understand. And anyone who's listening to this who really wants to blow up the business, you want to do skill stack. So I learned sales, I learned marketing, I learned copy, I was really good at coaching. I learned how to build funnels, I learned how to run ads, I learned how to do email marketing, I learned how to manage teams. I'm trying to think of other shit now. Like, learn how to talk on podcasts. Like, once you have all these skills, they bounce off and multiply each other. And that's really when you then start getting to the next level in terms of growing your business, or then it becomes easy. Because like if I shut down and sacked everything off and sold everything and moved to Thailand, which I thought about, I'd get bored after 2 weeks and set up another business. I know I could get another business of 7 figures within a year, because I already have all the skills. I know how to do it all. I have those like things that no one can take away from me. And that's the most important thing people need to actually do, is build the hard skills and also become the person who can grow their business. Whereas most people are too much looking at what other people are doing, or often getting retarded advice, which is what I see from a lot of them, about going down super narrow alleyways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see. So with the skill stack, what would you say are the ones, is it easy to say like the biggest 3 you need to get from, I don't know.
100%.
Yeah.
One, sales. So a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't be talking about sales. And actually it's ironic, because there's a mentor who used to be my mentor, who used to slag off sales, who now copies me and now says you need to talk about sales, which is ironic. Most people listening to someone know who he is, or might know who I'm talking about. So sales is number one, because that's what makes money into business. And also, if someone's been overweight for 10, 12, 20, however long years, they're probably going to be resistant to joining a weight loss program. They're going to need to be sold into it and convinced that they can actually do it. Confidence, right? We spoke about earlier. Second thing is going to be in terms of your ability to build relationships. And what do I mean by that? It's in terms of content. So like, how relatable are you? So like, how do you inspire people? How can you actually get traffic, and actually understanding how social media systems work? Because you can be great at sales, you've got no one to sell, you're not getting any traffic. That's not very helpful. And the third thing would be just, I would actually say, is the ability to think critically. So like, what's the one thing I need to do next to then fix like the point of a constraint in a business? And most people, particularly at the beginning, they don't understand that constraint is themselves. It's their mindset. Most people need to get out their own fucking way and just do what needs to be done. And I'll give an example. We had a client who was struggling with his business. He said he didn't have time, all this type of stuff. And I saw he was doing some stupid dance show thing that he's been doing, like loads of training and stuff for a while. I'm like, well, you said you haven't got any money. You want to make more money in your business, right? You're not happy with that, but you're spending 10 hours a week dancing. It's like, the reality is you have to like draw the line somewhere. Like, this is either a priority for you or it's not. Because if it's not a priority for you, it'll be a priority for someone else over here. And guess what? They're going to take your spot. And that's the reality of the way business works. It's like dog eat dog. So I'd say sales, relationships with clients through content, and then thirdly would be like mindset and working out the point of constraint of like, what's the thing holding me back? And most people, that's the person looking back in the mirror. And that's the same for me, transparently. Like, I'm not making $1 million a month because I'm not making the right decisions to do that yet.
With the mindset one, was there a big one for you that was a big focus in terms of getting you out your own way when you, like 4 years ago when you were doing the real estate stuff to...
100%. So I think there's a video I'm actually going to dig up, and I might actually try and find it and play it at the mastermind event and see if we've got speakers. I might do that. That might be a good idea, actually. I was literally like shitting myself when I quit my job. And what I would say is the biggest constraint I had, and I'm very much driven from a place of fear of failure, is that I didn't believe I could do it, or I didn't understand how far you could go. And one of the things that really changed my perspective was the first time I went to a mastermind event in the US in, I think it was like January 2020. Actually, it might be January 2021, because I thought I was like Billy Big Shit at that point. I was doing like 30K a month. So I didn't know anyone else making this type of money. I was like 28. And I went there, and then I met now one of my best friends, Frank, who makes like $1 million a month. And I saw other people doing more than me. I was like how? It's like if he can fucking do it, and he can do it, then I can fucking do it. And that just like altered reality for me of like entering the matrix. But like, holy shit, like you could do that. So for me, that's really just breaking the limiting beliefs in terms of how I can get to the next level. And from then onwards, it was literally like that year, I think I went from like 30K to 50K. And I remember having a conversation with Frank, actually, I've talked about this a few times. I was like 50K a month, and I was like, I'm going to try and get to 60. He's like, don't be a pussy. He's like, you can do more than 60. I was like, get to 70. I think I ended up doing like 80. I went from like 50 to 80 in a month, which was wild. And it's then just breaking the limiting beliefs of what can be done. And I actually sometimes now, I try and take myself back to the mental space I was in then. Because literally, I had like a shit little shed in my office, in my garden. It was my office. I literally would just go down there. Other than training, I was down there from like 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like, you're just grinding, like building funnels, doing all the stuff. Like, and that for me was like the Rocky cut scene and the place that molded who I am and what I've done. And it was incredibly difficult and I had to work really hard. But I spent a lot of time learning skills, a lot of time. And that's where I say, for me to get to where I am now, to break those limiting beliefs, I just knew I had to be so fucking good I couldn't fail, and just had to work hard and put so much time into it knowing that I couldn't fail, and eventually I would succeed. Because with anything, there's like a breaking point, right? It's like you put enough pressure up against a dam, it's going to break. And business is very much like that. Like, hence why I hit stuff with the volume hammer. It's like, if I just book enough fucking calls, we'll get there. And for most of the time that works. Sometimes in business it doesn't work. But the reality, in particular at the beginning, you need to just take massive action. And most people aren't willing to take massive action and are not willing to put it on the line to be like, yeah, I'm going to pay this person to help me. Yeah, I'm going to hire this team. I've hired like, I don't know, 5 people in the last month. Like we're scaling. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to do this if it kills me or not. And most people aren't willing to do that. And that's why they're not successful.
Then it becomes much easier in a way when it's like competition. Like, if you're doing the hours and no one else is, then it's like,
well, I can't lose.
Yeah.
And I think it's a statistic on a podcast. It's like, I think most podcasts fail. Like, you're in the top 20% if you do 4 episodes. Like, I'm doing like fucking 4 episodes in a day. Like, and that's the reality in terms of how easy it is in some respects to win. Like, I posted every day on Instagram for like 6 years or something. For a long time, I was doing 3 posts a day. Like, literally 3 posts a day. That's why I had 6,700 posts. For I think 3 years, I did 3 a day. And I think up until last year, I was doing 2 a day. And most people are like, oh, I can't post. I was like, it's fucking really not that hard. Like, get your phone out, like, write something, post it. Like, and often the work takes lost time than we think. It's just we procrastinate on actually doing it.
Was that to an extent when you got yourself in those rooms more and you're like, you see, like, the standard is higher in a weird way? Like, when you see everyone else is like pushing much higher and you're like I remember when I'm back in, like, you know, back in Crawley, for example, and like school friends and stuff, it's completely different. Like, the stuff you can get away with, quote unquote, is you can't get away with.
The standard's too low, right? And that's why, respectfully, I had to let go of who I was to become who I am, because no disrespect, like really nice people, amazing people, the people I used to hang around with and friends with were going to hold me back from my dreams of what I wanted to do. And I didn't just like one day be like, I'm not fucking speaking to you people, but like I just slowly distanced myself in terms of like, I'm working all the time, I haven't got time, it is what it is, like I'm going this way, you're going that way, like, and the reality is they now ask me, is like, how have you done this? I was like, remember that time you were playing FIFA and pissing around and I was just working, ta-da, like, and people ask what like the secret to success is. It's that, because the actions of what you do every day can either take you towards where you want to be or away from it. And that is the mindset you need to have in terms of being successful. It's just understanding like cause and effect, like what's the cause of what's going to cause the results of what you want in life, and what's going to take you away from what you want in life.
Yeah, and I think one kind of big kind of thought from this so far, and just everything. I think you're like still in the trenches a lot more than any like one in the space. I think you're doing the fitness stuff. You're like pushing it very very hard, and I think that then inspires everyone else to keep pushing. So, what's the like big picture goal? Like, do you have?
At some point, I want to get to $1 million a month as a run rate. I think would be cool. I want to get to a property portfolio of 5 million. I want to get my net worth to 10. I want to impact and just help as many people as possible. And I think I've actually thought about this a lot. It's like, because at some point I don't really need the money, and it's like, where are you going with this? My goal is just to motivate, inspire other people to what can be done, because the reality is I'm trying to become the person I needed 10 years ago. And that's where the value and fulfillment for me is when I have the ability to change other people's lives. I'll give you an example. First one came to mind. Matteo, the Italian guy on the mastermind, he messaged me yesterday. He went from 4K to 26K in 4 months, which is fucking wild. And the reality is, like, getting someone in shape is cool. Like, getting abs is life-changing to a degree. Teaching someone how to like feed their family for the next 30 years is even more life-changing. So the fulfillment I get from that is huge, and my goal is to be the biggest authority in that space, to help as many people as possible, and continue to learn and become the best version of myself, so then I can give that away to other people and give them the knowledge, the skills, the secrets and tips I learn to help them grow faster.
And it's this education, like online education space, is only gonna, I feel like there's so many like, different niches, and like it can grow. Like, do you see that space as well? Like, where do you see that like niche?
Space going?
Yeah,
online education space is going to boom. So my opinion, the traditional university education system is going to tank, other than people becoming doctors and lawyers and things you need to be super qualified for. Going to university to study business, just start a fucking business. Like, you learn from doing, and that's my big argument with other business mentors, is like, theory and practice are two different things. It's a completely different game when you actually do it. And as you said, you're in the trenches. Like, if anyone looks at my Instagram, I get loads of videos going viral now, again, on social media and fitness. I had one video get 1.6 million views last week. I had one last month got 8.7 million views now. Like, I know how to make content and create fitness content. I know how to monetize audiences. I know how to run traffic in the actual niche you're in, as well as what I'm doing in this as well, and all the other things I do outside of this. And I think that for me is like how you learn, is you actually have skin in the game of like learning, refining these skills, because the online education space is moving. Online, like if you think a year ago ChatGPT was released, the world has changed because of that. Where are we going to be in 12 months time? And staying ahead of that bell curve is what I'm going to do, and anyone who's working with this, I'm going to take with me. And anyone who's not on that journey is going to get caught behind. And the biggest thing I see why most people struggle right now is they're still trying to do things from like 2019, 2020 that used to work, that don't work anymore and won't work again.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those as well, like with like course style like mentorships and programs in the past. It's like what worked 2 years ago was like IGTV, and it's like
which doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, so it's you can learn it, but you still need to like actually, it changes so fast. one thing I've been thinking about, and maybe I'm taking it massively off topic, was the whole AI chat GPT stuff. I see that, like, I think the education side on that, I think people that can play around with it and like know it can really get ahead. I don't know how you see it.
I think there's I don't think anyone's really seen the potential of where that can go yet. The reality of AI, though, is it has replaced what people thought it wouldn't replace, which is creativity. But the thing it can't replace is accountability. So people want to deal with people, and AI can't necessarily look into someone's business and be like, that's the problem, because that comes from experience. I think AI is great in a tool in terms of editing content. It can be even in terms of automating all types of systems within your business. But when it comes to certain aspects, like managing employees, you can't have like a AI management bot to like sack someone or like handle problems. Like that's going to come down to you, and that's why you're still going to need to learn the hard skills for that, and also identify what works and what doesn't. So like I mentioned to you on social media, like our Instagram's like pumping at the moment, and that's because I've identified what worked and like the hacks in the system. You can't put in ChatGPT and be like how to make viral content. Like it's not going to work.
Yeah. Do you see like people using it at the moment for like how do you use it in your business, like AI?
I'll give you a good example. So me personally, I use ChatGPT for like, I'll write a hook, for example. So I'll be like, are you a trainer struggling to make money online? I'll type in like, write me 10 other examples similar to this. Bang, 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 bang. And I'll make ads testing different hooks. I would put in captions that performed really well and be like, reword this for me. So it reads as a caption and just reuse it. We use video.ai and some other AI software to cut up video for editing. We use an AI software for podcast show notes that's sick. I can't remember what it's called. Delegated that to someone else to deal with. Those are the type of things we use AI for. A lot of the content production stuff and some of the creativity, actually with scripting podcasts sometimes I'll do to help with the frameworks of that. And then SEO optimizing even titles for videos. Those are primary things we use AI for at the moment, but I think that will change as there's more intricate systems and softwares coming out. Like I've looked into automated AI messaging, but it doesn't work yet. I've looked into like all types of different AI softwares out there, but for me, I won't make big pivots on things until I've seen someone else like do well with it. And if anyone wants their secret success, it's like focus on what works. Like a lot of people say to me, like, why don't you run a VSL ad on YouTube to a funnel? I was like, well, I don't know anyone who's got that to work. So it's like, why don't I just do which I know works for everyone else and just do that better than them?
Yeah. Yeah, it might be like a very big distraction. One thing I had in mind actually was like, what are some of the biggest like shiny objects you see at the moment, or biggest mistakes that people should just like stay away from, or coaches should? First
one comes to mind is TikTok. Second would be that you should run paid ads straight away, maybe, unless you've got money to spend. Thirdly would be anyone who tells you need to build systems. These are like, if a mentor says to you, you need to focus on building systems, the three things you need at the beginning. One is a call booking link, Calendly. It costs you about £8 a month. Number two would be some type of way to coach them. So you can just even use Google Sheets. If not, I'd recommend Kahunas. Thirdly would be a payment processor, Stripe, some way to take money from them. 4 would be Zoom. You have those 4 things, you have a coaching business, you have the systems, cool. Go sell people. Like that I see as the biggest issue in the industry, because people they obsess over the wrong things that aren't going to move the needle. And that's why they get stuck, because they're getting advice from people. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm on a mailing list for some other people who do like business coaching, right? And they push email marketing to people, but which for fitness doesn't really work, because it works on low ticket products, okay, but high ticket doesn't work because when did you last buy something expensive on an email? Never. So what I see is happening is this: people are pushing people to run email marketing for fitness. It doesn't work. It works in the B2B market because the price point's high. Now, these people who are telling people to do email marketing don't even know how to do email marketing, because they're doing things like putting images in emails that send you to spam. They end up putting loads of links in that send you to spam. They've got banners on the emails that send you to spam. And like, it's like fucking blind leading the blind, because it's like you're doing all the things that you shouldn't do, yet you're the person telling them how to run email marketing. I think that's where people need to really take a hard look at sometimes the advice they're given. And like I say to everyone, it's like, we just show you what we do. Like, this is working really well. We've made a lot of money. It's like, you might want to try this, rather than being given third-party advice, which isn't that great, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess that's when it's like the email marketing side of things. I guess that's when it's like, if it works on B2B, it's like it's completely different.
It's
like,
completely, because the price point's so much different, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a B2B product might be, say, 10K, a fitness program might be 2. So you've got 5 times as much you can essentially spend to break even. So then it works, because you've got the volume there, right? So if I could spend, say it was $10,000, and it would cost me $1 in email, I could spend $10,000, get 10,000 emails, I might sign one up. But if it's only 2, it's a different game.
Yeah, and it also feels like it's much harder to get people. Like, even if you get people on an email, the response rates, it's just...
Yeah, I think for beginners, that's a red shiny object. I say once you've gone to a certain point of scale, it has some merit. Like, we send a lot of people to the podcast from emails. We use it just like a warm-up tool. But I'd say that's a big trap that a lot of people get led down.
Yeah, and then warm-up tool, then something that's just come to mind is like, say for leads you're having in your business now, like people not ready to book calls, or you've had a call with that didn't sign up. Where do you send them? How do you run it to, or like
podcasts? Like, we send a lot of people to podcasts like this for fitness and business. If you're watching this, you might be one of those people. So yeah, we send them to like long form content, because ideally what you want them to get is as much value from the long form as possible, so that can help them in terms of building their business, buying into your business, understanding more of what you do, because they need more exposure to you a lot of times if they're not ready to buy. If, for example, as a fitness client, we might give them free ebooks, guides, just give them some value. And the reality is, what you want is for them, when they're ready, they come back to you. So like, give, and eventually they come back. So I always say, just lead with value first, and then you'll get to where you want to be. And I think from a call setting perspective, the biggest issue we have sometimes with our team and other people's teams I see, they try and rush the call too quick. And it's like, you need to warm people up a bit. And the way I explain that is like the gap, right? The gap from where they are now to where they want to go. Like, you need to identify they don't know how to get there, and that you have the big shiny object that needs to go in the middle that they can help them with that.
Yeah, and I guess that's when it's more like, what I find with setting in DMs is more like actually analysing, just going more like showing care more than anything. And like, I think
providing value.
Yeah. And not pushing people like you say, not pushing people too fast, but also just giving them value, rather than just ending the conversation if they're not ready. Cool.
I think with DMs as well, a lot of people don't follow up enough.
Yeah.
Like, anyone listening to this, if this is before Black Friday comes out, I would suggest you follow up with everyone who you haven't closed or who haven't had on a call, and offer them a Black Friday offer. And if you don't have a Black Friday offer, you must hate money. You should have one.
Yeah. And I guess with the follow-ups, like, I often see people are afraid to do it, and probably I'm the same in terms of like annoying people too much with it.
You either want people to tell you to buy, or tell you to fuck off, basically. So it's like, I would continue to message them until you get a response. If they say, I'm good for now, then yeah, don't maybe message them in a month or 2. Cool,
I see. Perfect. And then the Black Friday side of things, like, I know that's going to be huge, but what's the stuff that people need to keep in mind for Black Friday?
So people think you have to discount your services, which you don't necessarily. So what we do is we give away extra coaching for free. So we'll sell an offer that's like 12 months, and we'll get an extra 3 months free coaching, and then we'll give you like $3,000 of added bonuses. So like, every ebook we've ever had, access to 3 live training events, like as much stuff as we can bundle up and give them in value. We will sell that to them like that, because you just really want to hype this up. And I'd also frame it about getting in shape for next year, that like, get your program to get in shape for January now.
Yeah, I see. What, like, there's a lot of resistance towards, or I feel there's quite a bit of resistance towards like the upfront 12-month selling. But like, what was was you always like that in terms of?
I did a low ticket program that was wrong, and then went into high ticket. And I've never really pushed monthly. Unpopular opinion: monthly recurring is for pussies. So people want monthly recurring because they don't want to fucking sell and they don't want to do their job. The job of you as a business owner is to drive leads and sales. If you're taking payments up front, you will make more money. You just need to consistently do that. Now, the reason people like MRR and call themselves the MRR kings is because they're complacent. They take their foot off the gas. They want people to coast. Respectfully, that's not what I push people to do. I push people to actually grow their business. So they have an optimal selling system at the front end that consistently brings leads in, gets them to convert, ideally to paid in fulls, if needs be into monthlies. And that's what drives front end revenue. Front end revenue you can then reinvest back into the business to help grow it faster. And one thing most people don't think about is that money now is more valuable than money later, because money later may never come. Because how often do you see like a client signed up and then they've had been a fucking car crash, or they sprained their ankle or whatever, so they want to cancel the program. So like they might have signed a 12-month monthly commitment, but they're not doing a 12 months.
Yeah. And like the reality of like taking someone to court is...
Yeah, it's not
like,
happening, right?
Yeah.
Which it's just not worth the headache as well for you. So I'd say the clients you pay up front are also the ones who are going to be the most committed and get the best results. And that's where people need to understand that it's actually in the client's best interest to pay up front because they're psychologically committed.
Yeah, and I guess that for people to not do it is just removing the fear, like, not, you know, like having the conviction of your service and your program up, like the biggest thing to...
100%. And I think people just don't know how. And that's not their fault. They've just been guided the wrong way. And I say, if you're selling monthly recurring right now, that's exactly what I would do if I didn't want to make money. Like, we have a lot of clients on monthly recurring payments, but probably 80% of our clients pay up front. Like, I think we signed up 3 or 4 people yesterday all paid up front.
Yeah, I see. And I think wrapping up, but like the last kind of question to mention was books wise, what are your maybe top 3?
That's a very good question. I like reading. One would be Atomic Habits. So these are all Atomic Habits, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. Those two are very similar books. It's basically like what you do every day is going to define who you are and the way you behave. And I would actually say, I'm not going to say Alex Hormozi books because everyone's going to accept that. I'd say Stephen Bartlett's new book, it's not called The Diary of the CEO, but like something about CEO habits is really fucking good. Whatever Stephen Bartlett's new book is called, I've got it on my Kindle. I've read it twice. It's very, very good. Gives you a lot of tangible things to take away. So like 2 are more like habits-focused books. The third one is on business in terms of like being a CEO, which even if you're just you in your business right now, you're the CEO of you. So like learn to manage yourself effectively, because if you can't manage yourself, you can't manage anyone else.
Yeah, perfect. And then just the last one that's come to mind on that, and you forgot before it's quite important, but what do you feel like has been your kind of biggest like lesson from the last 5 years or since the shed?
When you're stuck, think who, not how. Because every time I've got stuck, I've tried to find the right person to help me. And this is actually probably the first time in my life I currently don't really have mentorship, and I feel I've got a lot of friends around me who are very successful, so I just bombard them with questions all day long. But for me, I think that's the most important thing, is constantly like I identified who's the person to get me to the next level, and I'm now trying to play a different game. It's then difficult to find the person who knows how to get to the next part of the game. And I'd say for anyone listening to this, if you're in a position you're not growing or you're stagnant, then you need to do something bold and take action. And I've spent a lot of money on masterminds before and it's been shit. But like, did I learn something? Yeah. But like, was it as good as I thought? No. But then other things I've done have been like a massive home run. So it's like, I'll take the swing and I'm willing to strike out because I know the home run could be so big that it pays off 1,000-fold. And I think that's where most people, the reason they're not seeing the success they're wanting, they're not seeking that success out by putting themselves in the right circles, asking the right questions. And you probably heard me say this, but my favorite saying is that genius doesn't have great answers, he asks great questions. because your life will sum to the questions you ask.
Yeah, amazing. Perfect. Yeah, we're wrapping up, and yeah, thank you for.
It's a pleasure, dude. Anyone enjoys the podcast, if you check out, I've got my own podcast, The Business One, which is the Physically Jacked and Financially Stacked podcast, and then we have a fitness podcast as well, which is the Shred Show. So thank you, dude.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Perfect.